What did you think of that MFer Donald Trump tweeting that you're a boring actor who does too many TV commercials?
Oh my God, did he tweet that?
Yeah, he did.
Donald Trump has spent years presenting intelligence almost like a campaign slogan, repeatedly using phrases such as genius, high IQ, and smartest person in the room, as though saying them often enough could transform them into unquestioned truth. But during one live television appearance, when Samuel L. Jackson heard that familiar self-praise again, the atmosphere in the room changed. There was no explosion of outrage or dramatic confrontation. Instead, the room grew quieter. Jackson didn't raise his voice or put on a performance. He chose something far more effective. He examined the claim carefully and asked a question Trump never seems fully prepared to answer. What exactly does that supposed genius accomplish for other people? The event itself had originally been designed as a polished charity gathering supporting public school arts programs, attended by teachers, parents, donors, and young performers. The focus was meant to center on opportunity, creativity, and children. But the moment Trump appeared through video, attention quickly drifted away from the students and back toward him. He praised his own intellect, mocked critics as low IQ, and spoke about intelligence as though it were a personal award. That was the point when everything shifted, because Jackson was sitting there quietly observing it all, calm, composed, and completely unmoved. He didn't appear furious. He looked disappointed, almost like someone watching an important occasion get overtaken by ego. And when the microphone finally reached him, he didn't rush into the moment. He stepped into the silence with patience and control, the kind of calm presence that instantly makes a room listen more closely. His point was direct and uncomplicated. Intelligence is not a marketing label. It is not volume, and it is not something people need to announce every time attention moves in their direction. Genuine intelligence listens carefully, responds thoughtfully, and understands when a moment should be about serving others instead of promoting yourself. And that idea hit hard because suddenly the audience was no longer just hearing a boast. They were recognizing a recurring pattern. Jackson never tried to argue that Trump lacked intelligence altogether. That approach would have been simple, predictable, and easy to dismiss. Instead, he went somewhere far more precise. He questioned why someone would feel the need to repeat the claim constantly in the first place. Because if a person has to keep reminding the world how brilliant they are, maybe the repetition is compensating for evidence that never fully speaks for itself. And once that thought entered the conversation, the bragging began to sound completely different. It no longer felt like confidence. It started to resemble branding. Then Jackson shifted the discussion away from IQ scores entirely and grounded it in ordinary life.
Right. I didn't want to be right. I hoped I was trying to be funny.
I think you were trying to make sure people would go vote.
I was really hoping people would go vote. And I hope they'll go vote now because now they know what can happen.
He asked what all that claimed brilliance actually delivers beyond speeches and headlines. What does a high IQ do for families struggling with grocery prices? What help does genius provide to teachers forced to buy classroom supplies with their own money? How does it improve life for veterans waiting on assistance, parents worried about safety, or retirees watching living expenses rise year after year? These were not dramatic or flashy questions, but they did not need to be. They worked precisely because they pulled the conversation back into reality. And once that happened, the performance began losing its shine. Trump's response only intensified the contrast between them. The more defensive his reaction became, the stronger Jackson's calm presence appeared. The more personal the response sounded, the more obvious it became that Jackson's comments had touched something genuine. That is the strange reality of public confidence. When it is authentic, it rarely needs constant protection. But when it is fragile, even a mild challenge can feel like a personal attack. And that explains why the audience responded the way it did. They were not simply reacting to a single moment of humor. They were recognizing a pattern they had witnessed many times before. The loud declarations of strength, the endless repetition of superiority, the dismissal of everyone else, and the expectation that confidence alone should automatically count as proof.
a feud with Donald Trump right now. Do you know this?
No, I don't.
Because this is very exciting.
Oh,
for
really?
me, because he doesn't like me either, and so anytime there's somebody new he doesn't like, I feel a fraternity, a brotherhood with this.
Okay, so we're having beef?
You're having beef because I guess you said in an interview that you were a better golfer than him, and then you told the story as this.
But Jackson refused to accept that performance at face value. Instead, he redirected attention towards substance, consequences, and what genuinely affects people's lives. For many viewers, especially those who have watched decades of public leadership rise and fall, the message landed on a deeper level because they understand something straightforward. Intelligence is not measured through self-praise. It reveals itself through judgment, humility, curiosity, and the ability to remain grounded when seriousness is required. And what made the exchange resonate so strongly was not only who delivered the message, but the way it was delivered. There was no shouting, no spectacle, no attempt to dominate the room. There was only a calm refusal to participate in the performance. And within that refusal, something changed. The audience was no longer being instructed what to think. Instead, they were being encouraged to notice patterns for themselves, to compare rhetoric with actions, noise with results, and image with actual impact. And once people begin making those comparisons on their own, everything changes. By the end of the moment, Trump's claims had not been dismantled through documents or complicated debates. They had been quietly weakened by something much simpler: common sense. Jackson took a label that once sounded powerful and transformed it into a question anyone could ask. If someone is truly brilliant, why does every conversation eventually circle back to themselves? And in that moment, the room understood something important with complete clarity. Calm does not just silence noise, it exposes it.